Despite all this, here we are in another election, still talking about our oil addiction, still more dependent than ever. Why is that? You won't hear me say this too often, but I could not agree more with the explanation that Senator McCain offered a few weeks ago. He said, and I quote, "Our dangerous dependence on foreign oil has been 30 years in the making and was caused by the failures of politicians in Washington to think long-term about the future of the country." Now, what Senator McCain neglected to mention was during those 30 years, he was in Washington for 26 of them. And in all that time, he did little to reduce our dependence on foreign oil. He voted against increased fuel efficiency standards and opposed legislation that included tax credits for more efficient cars. He voted against renewable sources of energy, against clean biofuels, against solar power, against wind power, against an energy bill that, while far from perfect, represented the largest investment in renewable sources of energy in the history of this country. So when Senator McCain talks about the failure of politicians in Washington to do anything about our energy crisis, it's important to remember that he's been part of that failure. And now, after years of inaction, in the face of public frustration over rising gas prices, the only energy proposal he's really promoting is more offshore drilling, a position he recently adopted that's become the centerpiece of his plan, and one that will not make a real dent in current gas prices or meet the long-term challenge of energy independence. Understand, George Bush's own energy department has said that if we opened up new areas to offshore drilling today, we wouldn't see a single drop of oil for 7 years. 7 years. Senator McCain knows that, which is why he admitted that his plan would only provide, quote, psychological relief to consumers. I know that's what you've been looking for, is psychological relief when you're pumping that gas into your car. He also knows that if we opened up and drilled every single square inch of our land and our shores, we would still find only 3% of the world's oil reserves. 3% for a country that uses 25% of the world's oil. Even Texas oil man Boone Pickens, and Boone's not a Democrat, who's calling for major new investments in alternative energy, has said, quote, "This is one emergency we can't drill our way out of." That's Boone Pickens, an oil man, made his money drilling. Now, increased domestic oil exploration certainly has its place as we make our economy more fuel efficient and transition to other renewable American-made sources of energy. But it's not the solution. It's a political answer of the sort Washington has given us for 3 decades. And there are some genuine ways in which we can provide some short-term relief from high gas prices. Relief to the mother who's cutting down on groceries because of gas prices. Or the man I met in Pennsylvania who couldn't go on a job search after he lost his job because he couldn't afford to fill up the tank. I believe we should give every working family in America a $1,000 energy rebate, and we should pay for it with part of the record profits that the oil companies are making right now. I also believe that in the short term, as we transition to renewable energy, we can and should increase our domestic production of oil and natural gas. But we should start by telling the oil companies to drill on the 68 million acres they currently have access to but haven't touched. And if they don't use it, they should lose it. We should require them to give up their leases to somebody who's going to do something. That's common sense. We should invest in the technology that can help us recover more from existing oil fields, speed up the process of recovering oil and gas resources from shale formations in Montana and North Dakota, in Texas and Arkansas, and in parts of the West and Central Gulf of Mexico. We should sell 70 million barrels of oil from our strategic petroleum reserve for less expensive crude, which in the past has lowered gas prices within 2 weeks. Over the next 5 years, we should also lease more of the National Petroleum Reserve in Alaska for oil and gas production. And we should also tap more of our substantial natural gas reserves and work with the Canadian government to finally build the Alaska Natural Gas Pipeline, delivering clean natural gas and creating good jobs in the process. So these are all some short-term steps that we could take right now to provide families some immediate relief. And I know you need immediate relief. You need immediate relief. But the truth is, none of these steps will come close to seriously reducing our energy dependence in the long term. We can't simply pretend, as Senator McCain does, that we can drill our way out of this problem. T. Boone Pickens is right. We need a much bolder and much bigger set of solutions. We have to make a serious nationwide commitment to developing new sources of energy, and we have to do it right away, right now. If these sound like far-off goals, just think about what we can do in the next few years. 1 million plug-in hybrid cars on the road, doubling our energy from clean renewable sources like wind power or solar power, and 2 billion gallons of affordable biofuels. New buildings that are 50% more energy efficient. And putting people back to work, making those buildings more energy efficient. So there is a real choice in this election, Lansing, a choice about what kind of future we want for this country and this planet. Senator McCain would not take the steps or achieve the goals that I've outlined today. His plan invests very little in renewable sources of energy, and he's opposed to helping the auto industry retool. Like George Bush and Dick Cheney before him, he sees more offshore drilling as the answer to all of our energy problems. And like George Bush and Dick Cheney, he's found a receptive audience in the very same oil companies that have blocked our progress for so long. In fact, John McCain raised more than $1 million from big oil just last month, most of which came after he announced his plan for offshore drilling in a room full of cheering oil executives. His initial reaction to the bipartisan energy compromise was to reject it because it took away tax breaks from oil companies. And even though he doesn't want to spend much on renewable energy, he's actually proposed giving $4 billion more in tax breaks to the biggest oil companies in America, including $1.2 billion to ExxonMobil. Now understand, ExxonMobil is a corporation that just recorded the largest profit in the history of the United States. This is the company that last quarter made $1,500 every second. That's more than $300,000 in the time it takes you to fill up a tank with gas that's costing you $4 a gallon. Senator McCain not only wants them to keep every dime of that money, he wants to give them more. So make no mistake, the oil companies have placed their bet on Senator McCain. And if he wins, they will continue to cash in while our families and our economy suffer and our future is put in jeopardy. That's not the future I see for America. That's not the future I want for America.